morning, everyone. As we gather virtually today from all across the Ottawa region, we acknowledge that we are located on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Algonquin people. We recognize their long-standing relationship with this land, which remains unceded. We would also like to acknowledge Black History Month and celebrate the essential and fundamental important contributions that Black Canadians have made to our country and the fight to end systematic racism and discrimination in our schools, in our communities, and throughout the world.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Duffley.
And I'm Connor Fraser.
And we are grade 11 students at Immaculata Catholic High School, and we're also members of our school's track and field team. And we are so excited to be here today with Mr. Purvis's grade 9 phys ed class, as well as everyone viewing this broadcast over our live stream to interview Olympic gold medalist and current head coach of our Olympic track and field team, Glenroy Gilbert.
Welcome, Glenroy. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so before we begin, please note that anytime the viewers may send questions for Glenroy using the Q&A function, or for our live streamers, the link in Google Forms, and we will do our best to ask as many as we can. Also, a reminder that this meet is being recorded for future publication to the NCSSAA YouTube channel.
It is now our great pleasure to introduce you to Glenroy and provide you with a short biography. So Glenroy was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago in 1968. He was one of 6 children raised by his mother. And the family emigrated to Canada when Glenroy was 5 years old. Glenroy is claimed to have been a hot-headed teenager who was steered toward track and field by his high school principal. He attended powerhouse Louisiana State University, and from here he pursued his first passion, the long jump. After qualifying for the 1988 Seoul Olympics in the long jump, Glenroy transitioned to focus on sprinting. He brought acclaim to Canadian track and field when he ran the second leg of the 4x100 meter in a gold medal run at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta.
Glenroy represented Canada in the Summer Olympics in 88, 92, 96, and 2000, as well as the Winter Olympics in 94 as a member of the bobsled team. He was inducted into the Ottawa Hall of Fame in 2005 and the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame in 2010. Glenroy is the current head coach of the Canadian Olympic track and field team that will compete in Tokyo this summer.
The NCSSAA has prepared a short video for us to share with our viewers.
Cameras on the Canadian team. What a start for Robert Esme.
Esme was absolutely wonderful. He did everything right. He was psyched up. He kept Drummond at bay, and Drummond knew it. I think Drummond started seizing up about here. Esme says hand. There's the hand. What a great change there. Absolutely fantastic. Glenroy Gilbert blitzed that back straight the same way that they did in the women's when the Americans won it. And now you can see the bend here really. Surim was away then. It was won by this stage. The hand goes back, no troubles this time. And he took it 2 yards up and gained another 4. Double gold for Canada in the sprints in the 1 and the 4x4. Wonderful performance.
Well, Canada came to the Olympic Games looking for gold from Donovan Bailey and perhaps a gold from the sprint relay.
So what's going through your head when you're running your leg of the race?
Well, back in '96 when we were preparing to run in Atlanta, I mean, the biggest thing for me was always that we were trying to win a gold medal in that event. Now it wasn't easy, and some of the background around it is, the American team obviously the favorite, but for me it was always, if I can cover that 120 meter backstretch of the track the fastest I can get to Bruni, then I think that we can come away with a gold medal. I mean, after all, we did have on the end of our relay, we had the guy who won the gold medal in the open 100. So we had a strong team. We just needed to make sure that we minimized mistakes, and which obviously in a pressure situation with 90,000 people sitting in the stadium watching us, I mean, we were able to be successful on that day, right? It really comes down to the execution on the day, and we were successful.
That's awesome. You clearly At that.
Yeah, wow, that gave me chills watching it. Like, it's so incredible to see, like, just the pure athleticism. It's insane. So I really wanted to know kind of what mindsets do you think, like personally and as a team, kind of led you to having that goal reached?
Well, you know, initially when I started track and field, I started it as I used to play soccer, and I couldn't function as part of a team. I wanted to do, I essentially wanted to do it all myself, right? And when you play soccer, there are different positions, and you rely on the individuals playing their position. And I struggled as a team player, and so I had an individual mindset where that I am the only one that can control what it is, the outcome that I'm looking for. So that's actually what led me to track and field, and it's ironic that I ended up being and reaching the success as part of a team, a 4x100 meter team. When I learned to cooperate, when I learned that in order for us to be successful, the only way we were going to win a gold medal was to depend on each other and to trust each other. And so those are some of the elements of team that took me my entire career to learn. I mean, I was on a 2 and a 4-man bobsled team. So this, again, learning to rely on your teammates, learning to do your part, understanding your job and your responsibility when you're on the track or when you're on the hill, getting ready to load a 4-man bob, what's expected from each member of the team, and relying on them to do that and trusting that they will do that. So there was a bit of a transformation from the individual mindset to the team mindset. Now, make no mistake, the individual mindset remains, because you are still an individual within the team. So understanding how those two can coexist, I think, was the key to my success.
So I just want to ask a little bit about that. So that transition, do you think it really helped you a lot? So like when you're competing with a team, you're not just putting pressure on yourself, but like you feel pressure from your teammates to do well, and do you feel that you really want to push yourself for them?
Yeah, you know what, and that's what we call accountability. Like I work right now also with our men's and women's relay teams for Canada, and that's part of it. Every single time we are at camps or competition, the thing I stress to them is accountability. You have a job to do as an individual. You know, Andre DeGrasse is going to run the end of the relay. Well, he has a job to do, and that is to stand and wait on the incoming runner. You know, you're not to flinch, you're not to leave early, you're not there. So there's a lot of pieces to that. And really making sure that the athletes understand what it is that they have to do is key to success, right? And yes, it makes a huge difference how you approach it. But in the sport of athletics and sports in general, there's a learning that goes on throughout the entire time that you're doing the sport. And for me, that's what it was. It was a transformation from really being myopic in the approach of, I was self-centered, self-focused, to opening that up a little bit and expecting people to rely on me as I relied on them, right? So it does happen over time. It's not something that comes right out of the gates, right? It takes some time.
Awesome. That was an amazing answer. Sorry.
We also have a question from the Virtual Academy. They're wondering if you still are keeping in touch with your relay team.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, initially because we all essentially retired around the same time, and when we did, of course, we were in touch quite often. We're now in touch. I would say probably maybe once a year. We'll either at some function, or we'll get together on maybe at the Canadian Championships. We'll see one another as we continue to support the sport of track and field in Canada. So while we don't speak as often as we used to, we do touch base from time to time. But the other side of it too is that everyone is busy kind of doing their own thing. And I think with this year being 2021 being the 25th anniversary of our Olympic gold medal in Atlanta, I think we'll certainly be getting together a few more times once the pandemic lets up a little bit.
Awesome. Well, I think we should jump into our interview questions that we prepared for you.
Sure, let's go.
Awesome. All right, Laura's got the first one.
Okay, so I'm sure there's so many different personalities and kind of levels of coachability within different like track associations in Canada, and also within like different groups like runners or throwers or that kind of thing. So how do you navigate like coaching them?
Well, yeah, I mean, coaching is it's an interesting profession because especially when you're coming to it from a former athlete, because as a former athlete, you're coming in very self-centered, self-focused, right? On you as an athlete, a former athlete. So I think when you transfer into coaching, then you've got to put a lot of that aside, and you've got to start understanding what does it take to get an individual to do and to perform the way you believe that they're capable of performing. And so now you have to be very you've got to focus on that individual, and you've got to learn what it is that makes that person tick. And everyone, it's not a blanket fit for everyone. Everyone has different triggers that you as a coach have to understand. And I think you have to be empathetic to the individual and what they may need to reach their goals. So it's simply not about a blanket remedy for coaching and coaching athletes in general. You have to understand the athlete that you're working with. Now, that's why for us, in a lot of cases with high performance coaching, we limit the number of athletes that we coach to about 5 athletes within an event group. So if it's sprints, speed power event versus endurance, walks, throws, you're not cross-pollinating those groups, because again, there are nuances to the different events and event groups that you obviously have to learn. Now, in my role as head coach for Athletics Canada, I have to understand a bit of all the various groups under our umbrella, and that's what makes it, for me, that's what makes it exciting and fun, because while speed power comes very easy to me because it's what I come from, our endurance and marathon and throws and jumps is something that is a bit foreign, but over the last few years, of course, I've learned exactly how our athletes operate, what they need to perform at their very best, and that's spending time with them, spending time with their coaches, just to understand exactly what it is they need to do at the highest level.
Awesome. So for our next question, like here in Ottawa, we have an abundance of young track and field athletes who want to make it to the next level. And we were wondering, so from a person who's made it to the Olympics and who's gone through the traditional U sports route, what post-secondary path do you recommend for training in order to achieve your top potential, whether that's Olympics or just professional?
The way our system is in Canada, it's like you have to kind of belong to a club, and then you get hands-on coaching from volunteer, for the most part, volunteer coaches within that club. The route that I took was obviously I was a part of the Ottawa Lions Track and Field Club, and then from there I went to OFSA. From OFSA, I got a scholarship offer to the U.S., and then I went down to school to the SEC conference at LSU, and then from there on to our national team. So, but the route and the way people get to various places in their career doesn't have to be the exact same thing for everyone. You can certainly make a national team if you have a personal coach and you're not a part of a club, you can make a national team that way. So it really comes down to what your focus is. I wanted to make sure that while preparing for the Olympic Games, I wanted to make sure that I got an education. So going to school and being in an environment like at Louisiana State University, it gave me both of those things, right? It gave me the educational piece, but it also gave me a track and field program that was second to none in the world. So it was a place that I found really contributed towards my success as an athlete.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear about, especially like how different places in the world have different education systems. It's really interesting to hear like how Canada handles it versus the US. So kind of on that note, if you had a magic wand and could change anything about the track and field developmental program in Canada, what would you change if you could?
You know, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's I was just having this conversation actually just yesterday, and I talked about what we do for sports and activities in Canada. Primarily in Ottawa, I find that we're lacking big time. I mean, we're a city of over a million people. We've got sports, like all kinds of sports, and we don't have an indoor facility in Ottawa for athletes to go to. So I think to structure, and here's the thing. You want to play hockey in Canada, there's lots of avenues to do that. I see any other sport, however, it's an uphill battle. And I just think that we need to do a better job of finding ways in which to put all the sports under an umbrella where we're building programs around those athletes to succeed at the world level, at the international level. So there's lots of work to be done. And I think that there are a lot of people out there certainly willing to spearhead some of this stuff, but oftentimes, you know, if you hit a roadblock, most people are ready to just, you know, fold their tent. But we've got a lot of work to do. I'm not going to, I mean, I can go much deeper into the conversation from yesterday, but I certainly think that from a facility standpoint, from a coaching education standpoint, we need to do more work, and we need to look globally at what some of the leading countries are doing, and maybe design a Canada First model to exactly what we need to perform on the world stage.
Great. So for our next question, we know sports are extremely regimented, and at the Olympic level, especially. So leading up to the '96 Olympics, what was like a typical training day, whether that was diet or exercise or just time you woke up, maybe?
Yeah, when in 1996, when we were preparing for the games, I lived in Austin, Texas. So we trained about 4 or 5 hours a day, and that included, you know, your track, your weights, your massage, you know, cold tub work, and whatever else you needed to do. The diet piece was also important, but it wasn't something that we had a special diet. We certainly watched what we ate, but at the same time, we also ate what we wanted to eat. So it was a 6 days a week, 4 or 5 hours a day, and really making sure the key was to stay away from injuries, because again, with the Olympic Games being in the middle of the summer, and it being really the pinnacle of what we've trained for, we had to make sure that we had all the support we needed. We had all the medical people around us ensuring that we stayed healthy, ensuring that we had what we needed. And again, some of this stuff too is a bit of luck in a sense that you don't get sick, you don't get injured, and you're able to actually go from start to finish of an Olympic Games when you're competing twice. So you're typically out there about 6 or 7 times running individual races and relays. So we were fortunate, we were prepared. Here's the thing, we were lucky in a sense that things kind of worked out for us, but we were also prepared to seize the opportunity when it came.
Wow, that's awesome to hear about. So when you're looking to hire a coach, what kind of characteristics are you looking for?
Yeah, you know what, knowledge, understanding of athletes, of people in general, a certain level of empathy towards the sport and the people that you're dealing with. Coaching education is a big part of that. We have to make sure that our coaches are coached up and understanding not just the technical part, but also the ethical part of coaching, making sure that the cornerstone of coaching is do no harm and really protect the athletes at all cost. There are 2 types of coaches as well. There's those that coach by the art and those that coach by science. So the art is a more more understanding and using your experiences and passing those forward versus kind of like the science textbook type coaching. And I think when we look at coaches, we're looking for a mixture of both those kind of personalities. So you first have to understand people before you can really, or at least be willing to understand people, because sometimes it doesn't matter. You're not going to fully understand everyone, but you have to be willing to understand people, and you have to be willing to put the athletes front and center if you're going to be a good coach. Selflessness is in my opinion, is the key to coaching, because a lot of times athletes are dealing with a lot of stressors around them that is even outside of the actual preparation for benchmark events, so like world championships and Olympic games. And so how they kind of, and some of them are students as well. So, you know, your student athlete that's getting ready for the Olympic Games. So there's a lot of things going on in their lives. And you as a coach, you have to be the that person in the middle that kind of steers everything and keeps the waters as calm as possible, so that they can navigate through and perform when they're expected to, not just on the track or in sport, but also in school.
All right, we have a question from the chat. So we want to know, was it a tough adjustment to move from Ottawa to the deep south of the US for school? Did that affect how you were performing or your mental state or anything?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. Coming from Ottawa to go down to school in Louisiana, essentially the deep south, was a bit of an adjustment for me, because essentially, you know, you grow up here with cold and ice, and then you get down there and you just swelter. You know, the heat is unbearable, but also the mentality of the people is also different. So adjusting to that and learning to live in that environment was a huge adjustment. But at the same time, the hospitality of the people in the South is second to none. You know, a lot of them are very, very, very hospitable, and it certainly made me feel comfortable, made me feel welcome. I mean, the Deep South does have its issues, and I'm sure many of you have seen over the last little while. You've read it, you've seen it on TV. I'm not going to try to gloss over any of that. However, and I mean, I encountered some of those things, some of the racism and the discrimination being in the South. But ultimately, at the end of it, you know, once navigating through a lot of that, I knew why I was there. I knew what I was trying to get out of it. And in the end, I believe, you know, being at LSU, being down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, gave me everything I wanted to get by way of experience, you know, training, everything. My experience there, I speak about it all the time, because you take the good with the bad, essentially. But I was also very fortunate to have good coaches, good teammates, and the people around me most of the time were excellent and had my best interest at heart. So the transition, while initially hard, I mean, I lived in Louisiana for 7 years, and I lived in Texas for 5. So I learned to live down there pretty easily.
Okay, I think, so who inspired you the most to become a professional track and field athlete, and why?
You know, when I was growing up, like I said, I played soccer, and then when I decided I wanted to be an individual who would control my own fate and outcome, I looked towards, funny enough, I looked towards Carl Lewis, because Carl Lewis was, at the time when I was coming up, the greatest Olympian, having competed in 4 events at one Olympics. So long jump, 4x1, the 200. And he was, you know, he was exceptional. He was an exceptional athlete, and I just wanted to emulate that type of person. So, and that's why you see, I long jumped, I did triple jump, I ran 100, I ran the 200, I ran on relays. You know, I just saw it as anything that I put my mind to, I can do it. It's certainly going to require some adjustments and understanding of the event, but you know, as a young person, it's just, you know, you can't limit yourself. You certainly can't let roadblocks get in the way. If you encounter one, you just have to figure out how you're going to get around. You get over it. You've got to tunnel under it. Whatever it is, if you want it bad enough, it's something that you're going to pursue. You're just going to find creative ways to get to the other side. I think often, you know, I was encountered by, and unlike most people, you're encountered by a lot of challenges that would force you to give up. But if you see the end result, and when I started track and field, my goal was to win an Olympic gold medal, and I thought, yeah, I can win an Olympic gold medal. It seems so easy. And then I went to my first Olympics in '88, and I'm telling you, they say it was a wake-up call. That's an understatement. But I was still not deterred from that goal. I still believed, okay, well, maybe I wasn't quite prepared, but 4 years later, I went to Barcelona and I did even worse. So it was only at that point that I realized, hey, maybe winning an Olympic gold medal is not as easy as just saying you're going to do it. Maybe it requires some work, it requires some talent, it requires a little bit of luck. And I started to back away, not back away from wanting to win it, but recognizing that it may not be as easy as I thought it was going to be, and I would have to be very, very creative, very resolved in my approach to getting there. It may not be that straight line that I thought it was going to be, and I would have to go maybe sideways at times, and then backwards, and then forwards, and this is what brought me to bobsledding. I mean, I bobsledded in 1994. And then we won the Olympics in 1996. So, you know, I thought, okay, well, if I can't get a medal in track, I'm going to get one in bobsled. And then I did even worse in bobsled. So I'm telling you, it was, for a while there, it seemed like it simply was not going to happen. But in your mind, if the focus remains, it may even be a flicker. As long as it's still there, there are possibilities. And you just have to make sure that you're ready and you're aligned and you're poised to take advantage of the opportunity when it comes.
I think that's incredible, especially the bobsled. I mean, what made you pick bobsled? It always seems like a dangerous sport.
Well, you know what? That's a good question. I wasn't a very strong skater, so hockey wasn't going to work. Skiing, I'd never skied. I looked at an event that, well, you run, you sprint about 35 meters, and then you jump into a fiberglass shell and hold on to dear life for about a minute and some change, and hope that the driver gets you to the bottom of the hill. Yeah, so bobsled in essence kind of it suited like a speed power athlete, right? So you loaded a bob with the driver carrying 3 guys in the back, and really we're only there for weight, just to add weight to the sled. There's no real talent involved. The bobsledders may hate me saying that, but
you have to be extremely athletic to do that, for sure.
Oh yeah. It really, it's rhythm, it's timing. You've got to be really strong, and you've got to have a bit of fearlessness, because, you know, screening off the side of a mountain and holding on for dear life and just praying that you get down in one piece and trying to be better than everyone else out there, I think is a unique sport for sure.
Yeah. We have a question from the virtual academy. So they asked, what is your feeling for the Tokyo Olympics this summer? Will it happen? And how is your preparation different from other years because of the pandemic?
Yeah, good. That's a great question. You know, it's something that none of us have ever encountered. Will it happen? As far as we know, as of today, the playbooks were released. I believe it was last week or the week before, which is a pretty solid indication that it's going to happen. The preparation continues to be the same for the athletes. They're all training to the best of their abilities. Now, being in Canada, there's a huge amount of limitations that are on the athletes around travel, around facility access. The way it looks right now, our athletes are certainly, they're struggling to really put together some really concrete training, just because of the way the pandemic kind of goes and the ebb and flow of peaks and valleys. So that's been a bit of a struggle for athletes and coaches. But make no mistake about the one thing, it's almost like the Olympic spirit that lives within these athletes. The resilience is unbelievable, and I believe that our athletes will find a way to be in Tokyo if the games happen, and we as coaching staff, leaders in our sport, we're going to do our absolute best to make sure that they have everything they have. Now, there's going to be a lot of checks and balance in place around testing and how you kind of prioritize people within the village and separation between different groups. So right now we're looking at a potential games that are going to be, they're definitely going to be modified games. They're not going to look like any Olympic games any of us have ever seen or experienced, but as of now the plan is to be there, and Athletics Canada, COC, Own the Podium, all our funding partners are really pulling out the stops to help us and help the athletes prepare to the best of their abilities.
Awesome. So do you know if are the athletes are like the certain disciplines being grouped together to train together?
Yeah,
Or-
so that's really how we would operate our like if we have a training camp and we're working on one now for the sprinters, we would group them in the event group that they're in. So let's say your relay 4x1 relay individual would be in one bubble, your endurance maybe longer distance would be in another bubble, middle distance athletes would be in one bubble, and then never having those bubbles kind of intermingling, just to limit any kind of possible infection or spread of disease. So there are lots of different ways, and obviously we're being guided by our CMO, our Chief Medical Officers from the COC, from Athletics Canada, and they're just really putting in place a structure that we can operate in, and of course the big thing is just being as safe as you possibly can. And ultimately, I think the decision around whether or not there's going to be a games will hinge on just the safety of the athletes and staff and the people of Japan. And so that I mean, the last Olympic Games had, I believe it was 211 nations represented. So as you can imagine, trying to bring all these people from all over the world into one area, there's certainly going to be some logistical challenges. But from all I've seen and from what I've read, it seems like the IOC and then the LOC, they're all prepared and ready for it. So
Sounds great. I mean,
yeah, it's a bit unnerving sometimes, for sure, when you think about it, when you really think about it. But the hope is that we've still got a few more months, and by then a lot of some, not all, but a lot of the kinks will get worked out, and we'll have a structure and something in place that everyone can get behind.
Yeah, I imagine there must be like several new challenges, like with all these like precautions that you have to take, especially like the Olympic Games, like you said, where so many different countries are coming together. Like I can just imagine that would be a struggle. So next we have a question from one of Paul Nemi's students, which is, how did the bombing in Atlanta in 1996 affect you and your team?
Yeah, when the so we didn't stay, our relay team stayed in Buckhead, so that's just outside of Atlanta. I was in the village and actually in the Olympic Park when the bombing went off, or when the bomb went off, sorry. And at first, like where I was, I heard it. And then momentarily, like afterwards, you just saw helicopters and a lot of kind of like skylights and things like that, but had no clue until, honestly, no clue until probably the next day that there was a bombing in the park. Obviously for a lot of the spectators, because most of the athletes were in the village, so away from a lot of that, but the spectators that were walking, typically the Olympic Park is just full of fans and people that are buying paraphernalia and different type of things, and just milling around in the actual park itself. So, and being at night, you wouldn't really see a lot of athletes out there. But athletes, it happened, and it really didn't the impact on the actual games itself, because a lot of the athletes weren't even aware that it actually happened until the next day. But as they say in show business, the show must go on. So athletes are back out there the following day, just competing, and obviously recognizing that it was a scary moment, obviously a very surreal moment when you actually realize that what you heard was an actual bomb, and that we're in a situation like the Olympic Games, where typically it's a very inclusive environment where the world comes together in friendship and building these type of relationships. To have something like that happen, I think a lot of athletes were shaken by it.
So how did you specifically deal with that? Did you just try to put it out of your head, or did you just so focused on the events coming up?
Yeah, you know what, I was for me, this was going to be at least at the time, I thought it was going to be my last Olympic Games, and the focus was just so strong around what we were there to do. We didn't, like, even my team and I, we came into the Olympic village probably about three or 4 days after the Olympics started, because we were in Austin, Texas. So it was a short flight for us. We simply came to the Olympics to compete and then to leave. We left the morning after we won the Olympic gold medal. So the focus was really on performance. It wasn't on anything else. And typically athletes would go into the village 5 or 6, so maybe a week early before the games start. And a lot of that is just to enjoy just being around, everything that's game related. But that wasn't our focus. Our focus was, Donovan came in, we ran the 100, we ran the 4x1, and then we left. We weren't really, while we were aware of the bombing and we're aware of the impact on others out there, our focus was simply on the track and how were we going to beat the Americans and win 2 gold medals for Canada.
So do you think that focus comes with the years of experience that you've built up before, and that was something that it developed over time?
Absolutely. It really does, because I think when you're a younger person just kind of starting off, the focus could be a bit scattered. Not to say that you can't be focused. It's just that, and you saw from what I told you, I was, I played soccer, then I ran track, and then I went bobsled. So I kind of moved around with my focus on what I wanted to do. And I didn't sell out to sticking to one thing long enough to see the results until, of course, after we bobsledded. And then I was like, okay, Atlanta has got to be where this is going to happen. So everything, like I moved to Austin. I changed the way I ate. I changed the way I slept. The training was different. The group I was around, my training group, was a focused, high performance group. So everything that I did, and then having all those pieces in place, then it has to be your thinking. And the thinking can't be that you go into the Olympics early and just be a bit of a spectator. No, we came in with a job to do, and that's all we were focused on. And once the job was done, there was no celebrating. We just left and went back to Austin, and then went off to Europe to compete. So it really about setting a target and then staying fixed on that target. But I do believe, and I understand, a lot of this comes with age and understanding as you start to adapt and realize what it is you need to do in your sport to be successful.
All right, well, we have a question from Zach at St. Paul. Do you prefer being an athlete or a coach?
Oh, I prefer being an athlete any day. It's a remarkable time in your, now don't get me wrong, I don't miss it, but I did prefer being an athlete at the time. But I see the value in the coaching field, because you're close enough to it to, especially being a former athlete, to understand the feelings and recognize where the athletes and how they're feeling when they perform well, even when they don't perform well, and then how to address that as a coach. So if I had my choice, yeah, I would be an athlete.
Okay, we have a question from Notre Dame. Do you have any family involved in track and field at all?
No, not right now. Like I said, my two two daughters, they did a little bit of track with the Ottawa Lions, but it's not something that they really liked. I think they did it more to develop their speed for soccer. They're both soccer players. So track is a difficult sport, just like I'm sure soccer and any other sport is difficult. I for one, because of the nature of track and field and in terms of trying to be at the very top end of the sport itself, because that's really the only place you see any bit of recognition is at the very, very top. And it can, there's a lot of disappointments, a lot of heartache, a lot of, injuries. And so it's tough. I actually, I'm happy that my kids are not in track, because it's just, it's a massive roller coaster of emotions constantly. And while I enjoyed doing it, I certainly wouldn't wish it on I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but certainly not my kids. I just think there's just too many. You've got to really be resilient, and again, there's lessons in that as well. But yeah, they're soccer. They love playing soccer. So they just support what they feel their direction and interest is.
All right, so we're coming up on our 45 minutes, so we're just going to do a round of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So it's just a quick question, then first thing that pops into your head. All right, so the first question is, where's your gold medal right now?
It's somewhere near. It's around here somewhere.
Yeah.
Did you have a go-to breakfast on your race days?
You know what? No. In fact, I was usually so nervous that I wouldn't eat. Not a good thing. Don't do it. Don't do it. But I wouldn't eat.
What's your favorite snack or junk food?
Oh man, I love Doritos. A good healthy bag of Doritos. Even now, it's just not good. During the quarantine time and pandemic, it's not good at all. But it's Doritos. Oh, and a Wonder Bar.
Yeah.
Gotta have a Wonder Bar with that.
Okay. Do you have a word that you love to use, maybe or a mantra to prepare for like someone coaching a race, like that you like to use a lot when you're coaching?
One of the things I always tell the athlete is to trust. You've got to trust the process, and you've got to trust each other. I mean, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing for people to do. It's easy to say it, but to truly trust one another. And when you do that, that's when you see great things happening. When you trust, because what happens in our sport is a lot of times people don't trust and they panic and they lose focus, and then all hell breaks loose, as they say. But if you can learn to trust and trust the process of what you're trying to accomplish, it can happen.
All right, so the next question is your favorite pump up music before a race, or if you did listen to music?
You know what? I did listen to music as like R&B. I listened to an eclectic, bit of music. I listened to country. I listened to R&B. I listened to rap. I didn't have one particular song, because a lot of times we weren't allowed to have our headsets on, and we couldn't take it into the call room and then onto the track. So you really, if you listened to it and got yourself hyped up on the warm-up track, you took it off, and then you would get down, and then you'd have about an hour or 45 minutes before you're actually competing. So I actually just kept my music on the warm-up track, and it was usually a lot of just R&B.
Okay. Favorite subject in school?
History.
Did you have a greatest influence at your young age, whether that was your principal or a parent figure?
Yeah, you know what, I was very fortunate. I had teachers at Pinecrest Public School. I had teachers, I lived in the East End, so Blackburn, Henry Monroe. I went to a bunch of schools. We moved around quite a bit. But I would say the biggest influence on me as an athlete coming up was my public school principal, Mr. Glenn Monroe from Pinecrest, and then Mr. Ken Smith from Laurentian High School. These guys really, I mean, I wasn't your perfect kid. I caused a lot of problems, but these guys were able to kind of navigate me through a lot of that stuff and kind of set my feet. They believed in me far more than I believed in myself. And I think that belief certainly helped me kind of navigate some of the bumpy spots.
Okay. Did you have any pre-race rituals?
Well, no, I just, a lot of times before I ran, you know, I couldn't, like, usually wear watches. I would, you know, I would take all those things off. I had this idea in my mind that any excess stuff that I had on my body would weigh me down, drag me back, but that was it. I didn't have any, like, if I ate something special, or if I did try really to visualize the race itself and how I saw it coming together. I tried everything to calm down, because that was my biggest challenge, was conquering the nerves. That's why when they tell you, when you hear an athlete say, well, for instance, when I took the stick on the backstretch, the minute the baton touched the palm of my hands, it seemed like I just blacked out. There was absolute silence. It was just wind, like you're in a wind tunnel. And then when I passed the stick off, all of a sudden I was back. It was like I was in a trance for what it was, 9.02 seconds. And then the minute I handed the stick off, I was back, kind of looking around like, what just happened? So there's that, you know, trying to calm yourself to the point where you can perform at your highest level. And that was something that I worked on constantly.
All right, our next question is, if you were to compete in every event in track and field, which one would be your least favorite to compete in?
Least favorite? Oh, I thought you were going to say my favorite, because I could tell you what my favorite would be. If I had, I'm going to tell you my least favorite in a second, but my favorite event would be running a 400 meters. To me, that's the best event in athletics. The men and women's 400 meters. That's that embodies pretty much everything that you need. My least favorite would probably be anything over 400 meters.
I'm really surprised you said 400 meters, though. That's the race I ran, but that's only because, like, no one athletic wanted to run it.
Oh, no. Those are the guys. You'll probably look at it different now. If you ever look at the 400 meters, it is the event that requires speed. It requires mental fortitude. It requires guts. It requires endurance. It embodies everything. And to be able to do it 3 days back to back to back, which is what they do at the World Championships, at the Olympics, to me, it's the most complete event in our sport. Some people won't like that, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything long, I don't like to do. I can do any of the shorter stuff I love to do.
Okay. If you weren't running or weren't coaching, what do you think your job would be?
Actually, I was just saying this last night. I think that if I wasn't a coach, what would I be? I would probably be like a CSI detective. You know, like, oh, serious. I love detective work. You know, any of those crime and actually, initially when I started university, I was in criminology. So I like policing. I like detective work, trying to piece together and figure these type of. I don't like criminality, but certainly it's part of what you do if you're a detective. So, so that's what I would like to do.
Do you have a favorite detective TV show or a book?
Well, you know what? I used to watch CSI Miami. I know a lot of you. Horatio Caine. Oh yeah, with the sunglasses. Yeah, you probably, you guys probably have not seen that, but yeah, that would be my. I certainly enjoyed that when it was on. It was only on a few seasons, but even now, the first 48, those type of things, I watch that kind of stuff all the time.
That's awesome. We have another question from Paul Nemi. What was your personal best in the 100 meter?
Yeah, my personal best, so we have what they call legal and wind dated, and the only thing that matters is the legal, by the way. So my best was 10:10.
Okay, amazing. So I think that's all the questions we have today. Thank you so much, Glenroy, for your time and for answering all these great questions. We really appreciate it.
You know what? You guys are very welcome. Thanks for having me. You did an excellent job I guess, provocative questions. Some of them are really good. I think that I'm glad you guys are doing this, and I think that a lot of people in Ottawa or wherever you're looking in terms of individuals to contribute to these type of discussions. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Oh, and on behalf of Immaculata High School and the NCSSAA, we really appreciate you speaking with us today, and thank you and best of luck in Tokyo.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Guys, take care.
Take care.